The Liberal Party has decided to make a premature announcement about a high-speed rail that they're going to be introducing into the most congested and highly packed corridor in the country. They want you to believe that they're doing it for your best interest, and of course they are not. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. Let me say right from the outset that high-speed trains are absolutely the answer to many of Canada's problems. Many of Canada's issues can be solved with high-speed trains. Note that I am saying train and not rail. There's a considerable difference. Not to mention the aesthetics alone. High-speed rail is a hideous monstrosity of tower after tower after tower of electricity. I'll get into that. Now, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party made an announcement today that they are going to be building this railway from Quebec City up through Ottawa, through Peterborough, and down into Toronto. And many of you left me comments saying that you think that it's just a scam. And of course it's a scam. And you can tell yourself that it's a scam based on the fact that on the one hand, Justin Trudeau says that he's leaving, but on the other hand, Justin Trudeau made the announcement. Why would he make this announcement a full month before it's going to be somebody else, apparently, that's going to be driving the mantle of this country? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that, and I can explain to you. One of the largest reasons for that is that when the Conservative Party cancels it, they want to be able to run around and say, oh, look, the Conservatives don't want to give you jobs. When the Liberal Party took over in 2015, there were 18 projects for oil and gas on their desk, and they only finished one. The other 14 they destroyed. So don't get all bent out of shape. Will people who don't know anything about voting cast a couple of votes for the Liberal Party? Maybe. But those people would cast those votes anyway. They're not going to be swayed by the truth. They're not going to be swayed by the fact that they're broke, that the cost of food has gone up, skyrocketed again. And that's before April 1st. They're not going to be tricked by any of that. And there's no reason you can't reach them. There's no sense trying to talk to them. If they want to give away all of their money and live like they do in the third world, there's not much you can do to save them from themselves, really. I mean, let's be straightforward. If they want to cast their vote in a foolish way because they somehow think that it's going to show Donald Trump, who doesn't care what they do, then there's not much you can do about that. However, we can talk about as a people that are, use common sense. We can understand the construction project that is involved in a high-speed rail. Now, note that I'm saying high-speed rail versus high-speed train because they are different. They do the same task, but they are absolutely constructed differently. I picked this up from the Prime Minister's desk, the press release that came out from primeminister.gc.ca or something like that. I'll leave a link down in the description so you can go ahead and read the whole thing. I'm only going to give you a few snapshots of this. It's just propaganda. There's not much to it except for all of the talking points that you've been hearing from the Liberals for years. It's all the environment. It's going to make a million jobs. It's going to save the country. I'll get into that. We're going to talk about this at length so that I can have all of you understand the good and the bad of it. The Toronto-Quebec City Corridor is a mega region. It's home to 18 million people, 40% of our GDP, over 700,000 students, and more than 30 colleges and universities. This dynamic hub needs a transportation system that gets people from city to city in the fastest time possible. I can tell you right now that this is more about Quebec City than anything. Quebec City being the provincial capital, and it has very little infrastructure in it because people build it in Montreal. They don't build it in Quebec City. They use the train a lot in that part of the country, eastern Quebec and western New Brunswick. There's a lot of people that use the train. And they probably should be talking about sending it that way, but I think that they're trying to convince themselves that people will be more apt to give them the tax dollars that they're going to be draining out of the country for this project that will obviously be over budget and will probably never get completed to the 1,000 kilometers that they try to mention. Anybody that wants to take the train from Toronto to Montreal probably will take the $99 air service. That's something that they're not mentioning. That's why I don't think that this is going to go the way that they are claiming, and I don't believe that it's going to ever be completed. Will it get started? Does Quebec City, does the eastern part of Quebec want a high-speed rail? Absolutely. Does Toronto need a high-speed rail? Not even a little bit. They have a very good, comprehensive and extensive public transit system in southern Ontario, like in the Golden Horseshoe, as they like to call it. There are just not a lot of people that are trying to tell themselves, let me take the train to Montreal. They'll take their car or they will fly. There's not a lot of people that are saying to themselves, let me go to Quebec City. It's hard, unless you speak really good French. It's a difficult city to navigate, Quebec City. But it is the capital of the province, and there are a lot of bureaucrats there who undoubtedly need a better way of getting from Quebec to Ottawa. In addition, I'm sure there are a lot of people in Peterborough that would love a way to get into Ottawa. So I can see how parts of this rail might finish. They go on. He goes on to mention how this is all going to be done by a company that's, very inclusive, and they're going to include everybody that they can possibly include, except, of course, anybody who doesn't agree with them, and then they're not included in any way, shape, or form. Some of the quick facts. Canada passenger rail service currently runs on tracks owned by freight rails, which limits the frequency of the services of the offer and leads to delays. To address these challenges, the government of Canada has been advancing better passenger rail since 2016. You'll note that they only talk about it since they come into power. Canada's investment in cooperative development phase in the project represents $3.9 billion over 6 years, starting in 2024-2025. This is in addition to the $371 million that was provided in the budget. So, in the budget, they said they said we're going to put $371 million in it. And then everybody got together and realized that that's not going to be the kind of money that anybody else is willing to put forward. So the government decided to make it $3.9 billion. So they went from $370 million to $3.9 billion. Of course, that means that there's $3.2 billion that has to be approved in the budgets. That's a different thing, but that's not being mentioned in this press release, of course. Budget 2022 launched an innovative, rigorous procurement process that brought in world-class rail companies. A request for expressions of interest was completed in October of 2022. See what I mean? It's a lot of propaganda. Procurement was completed on a budget and was overseen by a fairness monitor. What are you kidding me? What do you mean a fairness monitor? What does that even mean? Does our government really have a fairness monitor? What are we, 11? Fairness is good until you get into the real world. Then we just want results. Results that come in under budget. Not because it's fair, but because that's what people do. Alto and Cadence will be signing contracts setting out the terms in the next phase of the projects. It's co-development. Now, there's a couple of links to these Alto and Cadence, which I want to show you, especially this Cadence. It's just wonderful. I'll leave a link to this webpage, cadence.info.english, which is the link that's on the Prime Minister release that I also will leave a link to. But this is the whole page. Cadence, about who we are. Cadence is a consortium of world-renowned companies with expertise and know-how in design, development, and operation of large-scale transportation infrastructure. The consortium members are CDPQ Infra, Aitkins Realis, Sistra Canada, Kelois Canada, Air Canada, and SNCF Voyageurs. Chosen through a rigorous bidding process by the Government of Canada, Cadence has been selected to develop the Alto project, a high-speed train between Quebec and Ontario with the state-owned company to ensure its construction in subsequent phases. Because what I feel like the Liberal government is known for when they take control of something, there's no corruption, there's no embezzlement, there's no one insider looking after the other. It's, wait a minute, no. They always have all of those things. They always scam the money. They always go over budget. I mean, they got a satellite company that was going to give us infrastructure up north. It's going to give the internet. They've given them $2 billion, and there has not been a single solitary satellite launched. I don't even think there's been one made, never mind launch, which is a completely different thing, right? It's a rocket going up into space. You can't just do that with a slingshot. Now, when I read some of these names, I see a lot of French and words like voyageur and CDPQ infrastructure, which, kind of sounds to me like Canadian province of Quebec infrastructure, and Air Canada. I don't know why we need a rail service or an airplane service in our rail, especially since Air Canada has, already a lot of trouble. One of the questions that came to my mind, the first question that came to my mind, of course, was I thought Quebec didn't want any large infrastructure projects like pipelines going across their precious little province. I thought they were saying that that's not something that they're looking for when they talk about having infrastructure built for Canadians. This train is an enormous eyesore on the landscape. I mean, you can't even begin to imagine the amount of construction that it requires just to put in the infrastructure of a high-speed rail. Remember that it's a high-speed electric train. So there's a lot of moving parts on that. It's just the same as a railway. So you got to have the gravel, right, that holds the rail from sinking into the ground. Then you got to have the rail. Now it's holding a 300 kilometer an hour train, which it won't really reach those speeds ever because of where they're putting it, but it'll still reach a considerable amount of speed. And that now requires it to be extra durable. So you have to really put that in there. And that's relevant because when construction firms put stuff in, historically, they like to, take a foot of gravel out. And you think to yourself, well, a foot of gravel is not that much money. But if they bid for 12 feet of gravel and they only put 11 feet of gravel over 100 kilometers, that puts a huge amount of money back into their pocket. That's just corruption, right? That's what we're talking about when we're looking at these large consortiums. Even if we don't blame the consortium, how are they keeping track of it? How do they know that it actually went down 12 feet? There's one white helmet on site every, 3 weeks? That's a different topic, though. I just want to point to the idea that Quebec says they don't want a pipeline, but they want to have this train. And here I have an image for you to look at. This is what a high-speed rail, electric rail, looks like now. You can see there where it says pantograph. That's the thing that reaches up and grabs onto the electricity. So everywhere that the train goes is just basically a streetcar. It's got a wire telling it how to get there, right? It's electric, right? And they want you to believe that this is going to be better for the environment. These miles and miles of poles and cement and wiring. And so this is what this will look like when it's complete. Now this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rails in the visual here in this shot. It's probably China or it might be Europe where they already have these things established. Do I believe that this is an infrastructure project that somehow Quebec won't think looks like a monstrosity on the landscape? Is this an enormous amount of stuff that everybody else, when you try to build a pipeline, the Liberal government said was bad for the environment? But now when you're building a train, it's just fine for the environment. And when Quebec says to you they don't want to have a pipeline, but they do want to have a high-speed rail, here we can see what a high-speed rail looks like. It's just like driving down a city street. There's so many lamp poles that are going to be required to keep the electricity both supplying it and keep it at the right tension. And, there's an enormous amount of issues and complications that go along with it. Now, having said that, will this create a little bit of a steady, regular job? Sure, until they discover some robot that can fix it, and then it won't do anything like that. But right now, let's just concentrate on the construction of this, how it's an infrastructure project that was announced by the outgoing Prime Minister. I find that very bizarre. The outgoing Prime Minister makes the announcement, not the one that's coming in. Before I get into that, though, I just want to show you what a pipeline looks like when it goes across the land. Once the construction is out of the way and it starts to grow back, you can see the trees grow right up to it. They grow under it, that the animal and wildlife are able to crawl underneath it. Many times they put the pipeline in the ground. Yeah, it does a lot of damage at first, but you plant trees and they regrow. That's the wonderful thing about them, right? They are one of the greatest renewable resources, so you should be able to cut them down and replant them without any problem whatsoever. And by putting them in the ground, you don't even know that it's there. They put a couple of access points. But Quebec says they don't want this, right? They want all of the money that comes from Canada's, making money on oil and gas, but they don't want any of it touching their province. That's like that lady that dates the mobster, They want to spend all the money, but they don't want to pretend like somehow they're part of it. It's weird. It's strange. And I don't believe that if Quebec is going to be taking tax dollars to build a train, they shouldn't be willing to take a pipeline. And I further don't believe that if they're willing to take the $13 billion that they have anything to say. You took the equalization payments, which means that we're putting it there. That's it. If you don't want the equalization payments, if you don't want to be benefiting from the oil and gas industry, then okay, you're cut off. Simple. It's simple mathematics. That's not anything that you wouldn't do in a company. That's not anything you wouldn't do in a relationship. That's not anything you wouldn't do in a family. If you're not willing to contribute, you don't get a piece of the pie. You'll remember that I opened this video by telling everybody that I believe the train is a solution to many of Canada's infrastructure issues. And I hold to that. And I will do videos supporting that. Now I want to talk about the desperate move that the Liberal Party has done by making this announcement. It does not make any sense to me strategically that they allowed Justin Trudeau to make this announcement, unless Justin Trudeau is deciding not to resign. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me. Now, I might not be looking, I might have missed a couple of things here and there. If it comes up, if it occurs to me something else, then I'll know. But I don't see it being influential in the provincial election. Of Ontario. I don't see it being influential with the swinging any seats in Quebec City or in Quebec. People are traditionally going to vote between the Bloc and the Liberal Party. The Conservatives are never going to get much ground in the province of Quebec, though there was that time Quebec went orange, and then that fella passed. And they're not going to support Jagmeet Singh, that's for darn tootin'. So why did they make this announcement under the office of Justin Trudeau? Perhaps it's because Mark Carney is his facade is falling to pieces. I mean, he says one thing to one age group. He doesn't seem to have a message or a plan. His message or his plan seems to be that I will tell whoever's listening whatever they want to hear. And if that contradicts with the person that I just spoke with, or if that contradicts to the person that I'm going to speak to next, I don't care. And if that contradicts to the books that I've written, I don't care. I'm just hoping that the media doesn't report me, doesn't call me out, and that maybe in the end I'll get the support of the under 20 millennials that have voted, that are signed up to be members of the Liberal Party. Chrystia Freeland seems to be fixated on telling Canada that she's going to pick a fight with Donald Trump. And I'm telling you right now, Canada couldn't survive a trade war with Mississippi, never mind the entire state or the entire country of the United States. There's just no way in the world. I'm not sure that we could survive a trade war with Greenland, to be completely candid with you. That's how bad the state of this country is. The dollar is weak as it's been in 40 years. The Liberal Party has brought more people in than they have places to put them. We don't have any way to move anybody around. I mean, the list of problems has only gotten worse, as in, even if the problems, the number of them are the same, all of those problems are much worse while the media is trying to distract it with Donald Trump trade war. And perhaps this infrastructure is just something that you could say to yourself, oh, like they're hoping that you'll say to yourself, oh, look, they're going to build us a train. There's a lot of jobs in it. There's a lot of money in it. They're not anywhere near to put any shovels in the ground, and there's still a lot of things to work out for this train. And I don't believe that what this train that they're offering is any of a solution at all. But it's not going to change the cost of rent. It's not going to change the cost of gas, cost of food. In fact, it's going to make it more pronounced because you want to be bringing in all of these tractors that are going to be paying a lot of money extra. You want to tax the cement that's going to require. You're going to want to tax the wire manufacturers. You want to extra carbon tax the people that are digging out the copper. You want to extra tax the carbon tax the people that are building the trains. Or do you want to buy the trains from China? Or I mean, like nothing in this plan structurally or infrastructurally is going to generate any money because we don't have a lot of the companies that we require. And ironically, many of the companies that we do have that we would normally source are all in the United States of America. So don't everybody get worried. All you can do is what you can do. You got to get up and vote. That has got to be the number one thing in your mind. You say, oh, look, a meteorite is crashing into the earth and it's going to, cause a volcanic eruption and earthquakes. And I will worry about that right after I put my vote in the ballot box. You understand? This is the only thing that we can do to make sure that we stop the madness. We have to get control of the country. When the common sense people have to stop telling themselves that other people will work it out. We have to stop allowing people to tell themselves that $8 jugs of orange juice is acceptable when only 5 years ago they were $3 and they would go down on sale for $2. And this isn't a small increase. This is an enormous increase. And rent and gas and car insurance and cars themselves and repairs. These things are far more important than whether or not the Liberal Party thinks they can bribe you with a lick and a promise of a train. All right. Be smart with your vote. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.